So again, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Katelyn Duncan. I'm the executive director at SaskSoils, and I'm really happy to have Adrienne Ivey on the webinar here this evening. So I am going to share my PowerPoint presentation once again and tell everyone a little bit about SaskSoils. Okay, so we've got our webinar this evening titled Rebuilding Soil with Forages and Cattle with Adrienne Ivey. Really excited about it. SaskSoils does host a monthly webinar series that's absolutely free for anyone to attend. And we have mostly producers on these webinars to share a bit about their farm, talk soil health, and share a little bit about themselves and their operation. So SaskSoil, we're a not-for-profit producer-based organization. We've been around for a little while now. Was founded in 1987 when zero-till was something that they were really trying to promote and incentivize farmers to do. So that's kind of one of our claims to fame. Since that's kind of become mainstream in Saskatchewan, we now sort of talk more holistically about soil health practices. And so we are that linkage between agricultural practices and environmental stewardship. Our mission is to advance agriculture systems that improve the land and environment for future generations. And we are a registered charity and we have an annual membership. For those of you that are not members, it is $50 a year for producers. As well, we do have some corporate memberships for the ag industry as well. Primarily, what we do is we host educational events. We do a little bit of research as well, but primarily we are agriculture and knowledge sharing. We do promote and hope that our events are rooted in science and grounded in the idea that farming today should set the stage for tomorrow. So again, we have monthly webinars. We do practical on-farm demonstrations or field days. We do some advocacy for BMPs as well through the provincial and federal government. And then we do host an annual conference every February, alternating in Regina and Saskatoon. Farmers for Climate Solution provides support for SaskSoil to host events on BMPs around nitrogen management, cover cropping, and grazing systems. So that's who is supporting this webinar tonight. We really appreciate and rely on that support. Our board, we've got a very enthusiastic and creative group of board members. I'm not going to go through everyone here. Maybe some of you recognize a few faces, but we primarily are a producer-based board, and each operation is incredibly unique and innovative in the way they look at soil health and farm production. We've got a small but mighty team of contractors. Myself, Katelyn Duncan, is executive director. Michelle Beckett is our finance manager. Sarah McZimmitz is our marketing and communications manager. Summer events, these are upcoming field days. We've got one coming up at Vanscoy with Brett and Arlie LaRoche. We've got one July 8th in Alameda with Mark Newman. We've got the Horizons event that is going to be hosted and planned by Derek and Tanis Axton, which is kind of a 2-day outdoor gathering, music festival type soil health event, which is, I think, going to be really fun. So we're really excited to promote that event as well. And then we have one more field day at the end of July in Summerside. Also, come visit us at Egg in Motion. We've got a booth and we've got research plots happening. We've got 5 different field trials with different types of soil health practices happening. So we'd love to see you at the booth this July. And then next month, not too far from Adrienne, we've got Dwayne Thompson. He's from Kelleher, and he's going to talk about multi-generational farms and how to build ones that will last. So without further ado, I will introduce Adrienne, whom I've known for a few years now, but probably haven't spent enough time maybe talking soil health, and so this is kind of exciting. Adrienne farms. Adrienne farms and ranches with her husband, Aaron, at Ituna. Their mixed farm consists of a 500-head commercial cattle herd, and where they retain their calves and grass them as yearlings. They also grain farm, 5,000 acres as well, so they're busy people. Adrienne has long believed in the synergies between different profit centers of their farm and sees cattle and long-term forages as the single most useful tool in rehabilitating damaged soils and maintaining good soil health overall. So I think this is going to be really interesting. Adrienne, I will hand it over to you and, let you take it away. And let you take it away.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Katelyn. So great to see your face again. We need to do this more often. Um, Thank you to SaskSoils for having me today. I'm very excited to be chatting about soil health. It is too bad that we're doing this in May because I feel like if Aaron could have been here as well, he is a self-described soil nerd, so he would have definitely had a lot of really great things to add to this conversation. Sorry, I don't have a presentation for you today. We're having trouble getting my screen to share. But that's okay. Mostly it was just some really nice pictures of the farm, mostly just so you didn't have to look at my mug this entire time that I'm talking. Um, and I was just going to say, Katelyn, I'm not sure when people have questions. Oh, here we go. Now I have access to this that I can see it. Uh, Okay, perfect. I love questions and I love things being interactive. So please, at any point, stick a question or a comment or an addition into the chat, and I'll definitely stop and address because I think that always these kinds of things are more useful if it's more conversational. So do not feel free or do not feel bad to interject. Please do. I love that. So yeah, I'll introduce myself a little bit. Like Katelyn mentioned, my husband Aaron and I farm and ranch near Ituna, Saskatchewan, over in east central Saskatchewan. We're about an hour west of Yorkton. We farm here with our son, Cole, and our daughter was also very involved on the farm growing up here, but now she's off to university and has chosen a different life path, which seems still weird to even say that. But um, so yeah, we farm here at Ituna. We have been farming since the early 2000s, so quite some time under our belt. We have had a many different iterations of this farm over the years. We started with very few cattle, built a very large cattle herd. I think at our largest, we calved out just over 1,400 mama cows. And now we've transitioned back the other way so that we have reduced the cow herd down to 500 and we've increased the grain farming side of the operation. So we're around about 5,000 acres now that we're seeding for the grain side. And our latest venture that's been happening for the past handful of years is we have certified a handful of our acres in as certified organic, which has been also a bit of a journey and something that I think really came about not only as a profit center for the farm, which is important, but also just as we were getting older. Aaron really wanted to learn about something new and to challenge himself to find new ways of doing things on the farm. Um, so that's why that kind of came about. So our land here as a reference point, because I'm sure there are people here from across Saskatchewan. Our land is very rolling. We have a lot of wetlands and we have a fair bit of bush. So for us, a nice open quarter is about 130 acres would be a very open quarter. But I would say on average, we're more like 110 to 120 cultivatable acres per quarter, which is sometimes difficult to deal with, especially on the grain farm side of things, but lends itself extremely well to raising beef cattle. Um, and with that being said, every single quarter on our farm, which total land base is, I think, right around 11,000 acres right now. And every single quarter is multi-use. Some years it might be in grain farming, and some years it might be in long-term forages. But something that we have done for a very, very long time and seen as the ideal for a very long time is using our cattle and forages to rehab damaged soils. We were very lucky that some of the land that we purchased over the years has come to us in great condition. We've also had other land where the soil has been very mined, very low organic matter, very little soil structure. So we learned very quickly in our farming years that forages and cattle has been the quickest and easiest way to really get that soil back into shape. Um, I think that it's pretty common knowledge now for everybody that organic matter is really the key to soil health. Everything builds off organic matter. And of course, on the grain farm side, there are things that we can do to help increase that. Minimal tillage, chopping straw, you know, cutting higher, so many different things. But forages and cattle just really we were really able to really speed that process up of improving organic matter. And then through that, what we believe, even though we haven't measured it as much, but we really believe that our soil microbiome has followed in the organic matter. I think that bugs need food, and organic matter is the food that they want to eat. So, yeah, that's what kind of where our farm sits and what we've been doing. I wish I had my slide presentation here to keep me on track so that I did keep rambling. Measuring soil health. So soil health is something that we have seen as important for a long, long time. I think that right now, with the advent of learning more about the microbiome, it's a really popular thing to talk about. But when we started farming decades ago, it wasn't that popular. It wasn't that common, especially as we were growing the cattle herd. We were one of the only farms that I knew of that was still very dedicated to soil sampling and looking and quantifying that every year over year, so that we could see trends of what was happening. Something that has been really important to us is to take the time and to bring in the expertise to really look at that closely and something to keep an eye on. No different than a good farmer always keeps a close eye on their bank account. They also keep a close eye on their organic matter content, we believe, especially Aaron, the soil nerd. So when it comes to things that we've learned over the years in looking at our soil health, that we have found is that less disturbance matters. When I talk about long-term forages, I'm not talking 20, 30 years. For us, because all of our land is part of a greater rotation, for us, a long-term forage stand is 5 to 8 years. And really that just depends on what the land itself is like, where it's located on our farm, and what the weather systems have been like while that land's been in forages. So 5 to 10 years, 5 to 8 years, we just find that by the end of 8 years, it's very difficult to keep our alfalfa into particular population up and also thriving and yielding well enough to want to keep it in forages. We've really found in the past 10 years, we've had such cold springs that has been extremely hard on our alfalfa. And so that's been a big limiting factor as to how long land can productively stay in forages for us. After land is ready to come out of forages, when it's dropped in productivity, we will move into usually oats, and we'll grain crop that land for 3 to 4 years, depending on how things go, and then move it back into forages as, again, a very long 10-year rotation. And that is where organic farming for us really came in too. When you are taking a stand out of production that has been in forages for 8 years, it was fairly seamless for us to certify it as organic, which was a very lovely bonus. And also, it just made sense that that land was full of nutrients. Forages are great for also cleaning up weed problems. So it just made so much sense to be able to use that land as organic. Um, what else can I talk about? The wet years, which seem like a very, very distant memory right now. But for anybody who was farming in here when it's about what, 10 years ago, we had a stretch of about 5 years that were incredibly wet and very difficult to farm through. But one thing that we really learned was that as that weather pattern shifted, the land that was in long-term forages, as it started to dry up and move more into drier years, our land that had been annual cropped through that, it ended up being having a lot of low-lying areas that were high salinity and very unhealthy just in that transition. Whereas the land that had a lot of alfalfa on it, thanks to that beautiful deep taproot of alfalfa, it was, well, two things, able to the water infiltration on that soil was so much better. It was able to drain away the water in the first place. And then also, as the land dried up, because those deep tap roots were pulling from underground so far, instead of those salts being pulled to the surface, alfalfa helped keep it below surface, which was great. Um, what else? After that was the dry years, because there's just not nearly enough of the years that are just right in between. But the dry years that we've been having more recently, we've also noticed a really huge difference on our farm, on the land that has had a lot of forages on it and cattle that go with the forages, because water infiltration is so much better. When we do get moisture events, the land is much more able to absorb and hold on to that moisture. The water holding capacity is so much higher that we just find that land to be so much more resilient than maybe fresher land to us that hasn't had that long history of forages and cattle in the rotation. And something that also that I should add, that I talk a lot about forages, but the reality is that we really believe that the cattle that go with the forages are just as equally, if not maybe even more important to the health of the soil. There are things like the impact of hooves on the soil and breaking up some hard pan. Perhaps it's some of that. I think a lot of it also is nutrient management, and that anytime that the cattle are actually physically on the land and you're able to feed out there instead of removing the forages from the land and feeding the cattle in another location, you get to leave not only a lot of the nutrients there, but again, that precious organic matter. It's the litter that goes with the forages that's so important. Makes me think of Tara Davidson, because she's the litter and trash management queen down in Southwest Saskatchewan. But it's really so important to have that litter that protects the top of the soil and that is breaking down and slow releasing nutrients year over year over year. That's been an enormous part of what has, I believe, helped make our land better year over year over year. Um, I really believe that feeding cattle on the land can help, especially in areas like ours where our land is so variable. We have low-lying areas that are very naturally high in organic matter. And then we have hilltops that are so easily mined and stripped of all organic matter, of all nutrients. Runoff, erosion can be such a problem on rolling land like ours. So we're able to feed cattle in areas that need extra boost of attention and rehabilitation. That's been enormous. For a lot of years, we bale grazed all winter long. Something about our cattle, even now, they are out on the land 365 days a year, other than freshly weaned calves that we will bring in background for a couple months, maybe 3 months of the winter. But the mama cattle are out grazing and or being fed 365 days a year. And I do believe that that has made such an enormous impact into the soil health across the board. And we see that just in the fact that we can't feed on all of our land at all the times, and sometimes it makes more sense to feed cattle closer to home, especially now that we are not bale grazing. We are hauling feed out to cows every day. So therefore, it just makes more sense to be driving a shorter distance to haul that feed to cattle. And we can see the difference on the land that has had cattle being fed on it throughout the winters. Um, we like to joke that you can actually even smell the difference in the soil itself, which has a lot to do with the soil microbiome and the microorganisms that are thriving in that soil. Um, I don't know. I feel like this, I should have said this at the very beginning of the webinar, but I feel like this could be the shortest webinar ever because the beginning and the middle and the end of it are all that cows and forages are awesome and do wonderful things for soil. Uh, I think that I think that something that I often forget about is just how frequently, or sorry, just how easy it is for us to run a system like we do with different profit centers between grain farming and cattle farming. It might be an entirely different story if we farmed in a place that there wasn't a tree to be seen or there weren't natural waterways for our cattle to drink out of all summer long. It can always be done. There are systems built for those scenarios, but it's maybe not quite as easy when we have natural shelter belts, we have natural windbreaks, and we have natural water systems for cattle to take care of our cattle for those 365 days a year. I think that that one thing I will add is that our waterways, because we have cattle out there year round, it's something we have to be very conscious of. Like what most people do nowadays, where we rotationally graze. That's made a big difference in protecting our riparian areas, making sure that cattle aren't left in on water, not on natural water in any one spot for too long of a time, because that can do a lot of damage to the riparian zones in those areas. But as long as cattle are moved frequently, it's really, really minimal damage that is done to the edges of our sloughs and wetlands, which is a very good thing. Um, I don't know. I would love it if anybody had any questions that they had to put into there or into the chat box. Do you have anything for me, Katelyn?
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, they can put them in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, then I can unmute you and you can ask them directly to Adrienne. So go ahead and ask questions if you have them. I don't see any right now, so I'll maybe start. You mentioned that your land is quite variable. So do you have challenges with salinity at all? And can you kind of talk about how cattle and forages impact salinity in terms of rehabilitation? Do you treat those areas specifically? Yeah, just curious about soil salinity a little bit.
Yeah, so I talked about that in the coming out of the wet years. There was a lot of our land that had salinity issues. Alfalfa itself is a wonderful rehabilitator when it comes to saline areas. Uh, it's definitely not an end all be all. I think that once an area is too saline to establish forages, then you're really in trouble. But the years and years of foxtail issues that we had to go along with that salinity is a testament to just how difficult that can be. Um, but by far, the best way for us to prevent that from happening in the first place was having forages that included alfalfa in already growing. And the difference in the land between annual cropping and those that had alfalfa was night and day difference. Now,
Mhm.
some of that involves a crystal ball and knowing when those kinds of weather transitions are going to happen. Um, but definitely, that's been a huge thing for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Nicole, what is your most profitable decision or change you have made in the last 2 to 3 years in regards to soil health, or maybe biggest return? Um, well, I would say so. The most profitable decision that we've made in the past 2 to 3 years, without regards to soil health, was the switch to certified organic on some of our land. That has been a very much a financial stabilizer for our farm. That being said, my main concern with going that was the worry over what that might do to our soil health, because obviously we were new to it. We didn't know what effects that might have on our soil health long term. Obviously, for us to farm organically, we are doing it far more tillage than we have ever done before. In the past, what it looked like for us to take a forage stand out of production was we would spray it out and then disc oats straight in without having to rip it up at all. And moving to organic, it meant obviously not spraying it out and using purely tillage to not only prepare the seed bed, but also to physically kill the forage stand itself, which takes quite a bit of tillage.
Yeah.
And my big concern, both of our big concern, was what that would do to the decades of beautiful soil we had built over the years. But the great part about having cattle still a part of our operation is that we are very confident, and we've been doing it long enough now that I'm even more confident that we have the tools that we need to halt that reduction in soil health and even bring it back to how it was. Um, we have tried in the past things like cover cropping. We've tried, multi-species cover cropping with the turnips and all the brassicas and those kinds of things. And while they were good, nothing was as speedy or as effective at rehabbing soils as forages and cattle on the land were. So we've perhaps shortened our annual cropping timeline between years of forages on this organic land, but we have seen very little dip in organic matter. More than anything, the struggle has been to control the weed seed bank and the decades of weed seeds that we're uncovering as we're tilling. But my main concern was organic matter content, and we are not seeing a large movement of that, which has been huge. We've only been doing this for maybe 5 years now, so time will tell. Nothing is written in stone. I know it's all part of the learning process, but definitely that has been the profitable part, but was also my concern for soil health. Um, Paige, how do you contain your cattle? Electric fence or electric fence, virtual, fixed? Yeah, we are huge, huge fans of electric fence around here. Unfortunately for us, our timing for virtual fencing was not optimal. We have been downsizing our herd with right when virtual fencing has become a commercially available thing. But I think that virtual fencing is going to be the ticket going forward. Anyone who's rotational grazing a decent amount of cattle, man, to not have to worry about paddock fencing and only have to have maybe barbed wire, whatever, good perimeter fencing, that would be absolutely wonderful. Something that we will definitely be keeping our eye on depending on where our cattle numbers go. I think that the ability to manage your cattle even better with virtual fencing would be great. And in situations like ours, where we are rotating all of our land in and out of forages, to not have to pull up paddock fencing in between years would be huge. So we run big, giant electric fencers. And luckily for us, we've been doing this for so long that all of our land is fenced. We don't have to keep adding new fencing other than just paddock fencing when we're rotationally grazing on land that's just recently gone back into forages. Kylie, good job, Adrienne. Thank you, Kylie. Question on longevity of forages. Does adding manure or fertilizer help keep legumes productive longer? Man, this has been the struggle and something that I can honestly say we've never found a silver bullet on. But there are some forages that we could keep long term. We could grow crested wheatgrass and that stuff would never die. But the key for us has always been keeping a healthy population of alfalfa that not only is the best nutrient value feed that we can grow, but also gives the best return for the land and the soil itself. So that's been such an important forage species for us. And keeping that alfalfa population consistent past 5 to 8 years has been such a struggle. We have tried reseeding, we have tried feeding alfalfa seed through cattle and having them naturally reseed it. We have tried broadcasting and heavy traffic over top. We've tried fertilizing, like you suggested. There are things that help that might extend your stand longer that we found. Pig manure is a wonderful thing. We're fortunate to have some pig barns around us, and they love to spread pig manure on forages because they can have access to it during the growing season. They don't have to wait till after the crop's been removed. And I don't know if it's the high phosphorus content or sulfur or something beyond just nitrogen, but that has definitely done a lot for the health of the forage stand, far more than just we've tried spreading just nitrogen or dry phos on top, and it's maybe gave it a boost in production but hasn't boosted the longevity, unfortunately. So we have not found a silver bullet to that. The silver bullet, quite honestly, has been ripping it up and seeding it annually for a few years and then putting it back into forages. Stuart, have you found any changes to your business on the land access/value and asset side of the business? Is that starting to become a part of the soil health conversation for you? Easier to access to rent land because landlords want to rent it to you, or lower rents because of your soil building practices? Land value increases, or even buying, selling land trading as you add value from soil health. Is soil health purely an operational benefit, or is it starting to be internalized into land values/plans and rental negotiations? I would say I would say we've been seeing it more from the other side of that perspective as we have been buying land, not selling. So soil quality is definitely something that we look at when trying to put value on land that we're purchasing. But the sad reality is that not everyone does, and land value is land value, and it's not just what I will pay for it; it's also what somebody else will pay for it. Um, so it's not a huge part of the discussion yet or conversation when valuing land. I think it's a fraction, and maybe that fraction is getting a little bigger. Um, but I also know that for us, because we feel confident that we can and we have, and we will continue to rehab soil, that is a short-term issue. When we're buying land, we're planning on farming it for the next decades, and so having that soil be in a lower health level is really just a short-term problem for us, and something that, yes, will cost us some money and some time and some yield to solve, but it is a solvable problem, which is a very good thing. Um, Katelyn, when you're bale grazing, how do you deal with deer, elk, etc. eating the bales? Do you only bring out a set number at a time, rotate the cattle every few days? So, full disclosure, we're not bale grazing a lot anymore. Bale grazing, hands down, was one of the best tools in our toolbox in the winter for managing soil health. It was so fantastic, but we were bale grazing during those wet years that I was talking about. And the reality was, when we were feeding 1,000 cow herd, that in the wet years, we just could not physically put up enough high quality hay in order to bale graze. Well, honestly, the quality of feed was just not good enough. So we moved back to feeding a TMR and using a feed truck to haul silage and grain mixture out to the cattle, which is still great. It's still better than having them in the yard, but it isn't the same as bales. But when we were bale grazing, we are very lucky we don't have an elk problem here. There is one on the other side of Ituna, and hopefully they always stay there. But deer are definitely an issue. But ironically, they were far less of an issue when we were bale grazing. Our system then was, we wouldn't even bring the bales into the yard. The bales would go directly out to where we were going to bale graze. Sometimes we bale grazed on the field that those bales were dropped and were baled and dropped right out of the baler. And we were strategic that way. So we had to move the bales as little as possible. And because they were more spread out, it didn't seem to attract the deer as much as now, when we have silage and bales all compactly in our feed yard. And for the past 5+ years, we have between 200 and 400 deer every single day in our feed yard. And that's with the feed yard completely surrounded by wildlife fencing. But I think it's a generational thing now that these deer have just always come to winter at our feed yard, and there's literally nothing we can do about it other than file our annual claim with crop insurance for wildlife damage, because those darn things, they eat a fair bit, but what is far worse is they step on everything and defecate on everything and just wreck the bales, wreck the silage pile. Again, not as bad as elk would be. Elk really like to wreck stuff, but the deer are awful. So it's a struggle for us. And we have to actually consciously put up extra feed every year, knowing that the deer will come and destroy a bunch of our feed, which is really, really crummy on dry years when we don't have much feed. So yeah, it is ironic that when we were bale grazing, it was far less of a problem. They would maybe come and nibble at some bales, but they wouldn't climb all over them and wreck them and that kind of thing. The great part about when we were bale grazing was we would use sisal twine and wrap the bales very lightly and just drop them, leave them in the field, only maybe move them so that they were set more on hilltops and that kind of stuff. But we never had to pull twines because the sisal twine degrades on its own. It was almost like a little having feeder around every bale and would restrict the cattle just enough without restricting their intake too much. And we would just open up new paddocks every few days and not have to pull twines, which was a great thing because anybody who's done a lot of bale grazing knows that twine is an issue for sure.
There's a
Yeah.
question further up in the chat from Becky. She said, I missed the beginning of the webinar, so maybe you covered this, but do you fertilize with your cattle manure?
Yeah, so I mean, manure is one of the greatest fertilizers out there, for sure. So we definitely utilize it. You probably missed me saying this, but our main cow herd is never in the yard, so they are out on one piece of land or another. They are get moved sometimes throughout even the winter. So they are naturally fertilizing the land constantly, which is a very big thing. We background our calves for after they're weaned in the winter, and so we do when we clean out the feedlot, that gets hauled out. We've done it a couple different ways. We will use manure and spread it straight out of the feedlot and directly onto the land. Or depending on sometimes when we had more cattle, truck availability and stuff like that, we would lay it in rows in fields and then let it compost until the next year, even though we never focused on composting and never did a very good job of it, unlike some places that do a really, really good job of it. That would have been better. But that wasn't an area that we ever really got into. But sometimes we do spread it later on and after having it lay out in the field for a while, like in piles. Yeah. And I think that's all of the questions now that I've.
I think you're caught up.
Okay.
I'll I'll ask a question, and since there's none right now, but I'm curious about your conversion to some organic acres. So what does that look like? Do you like um is it inspected? Are vineyards inspected annually? Do you have to have a separate vineyard? Like what does that look like from growing the crop to storing the crop to moving your grain? Like, yeah, t tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So again, I wish Aaron was here because those kinds of details are very much his forte, and I definitely don't want to misspeak or mislead on what the process is. But basically, we run things very separately. Once a set quarter, for example, is certified organic, we can't like, oh, now we're going to farm it conventionally, but then we're going to move it back to organic. Or, once that land is set organically, we just maintain it as that and we farm it completely differently than obviously the rest of the conventional stuff. Also, another big thing is we don't cross grow crops. So, for example, we grow organic oats. So we do not grow any conventional oats because you can see how not only could that get shady, but
Yeah.
also just could get easy to like have mix-ups and things like that, right? Whereas we know that every bushel of oats that we've grown is organic, and there's no confusion about that. We use the same equipment, but we have to be very, very careful. It's part of our seeding plans and harvesting plans is trying to farm things in blocks instead of going back and forth between organic and conventional all the time. Springs like this make that a little bit harder because we've gotten a lot of curveballs thrown at us, like the 3-day snowstorm this weekend. That means we're constantly switching up seeding plans. So that can get a little bit dicey when we're, not wanting to go back and forth between organic and conventional land. Um, one that does remind me though, speaking of switching things up and seeding plans, it's one thing that we have found is that when we are taking forage land out of production, um, it is that soil is a lot drier coming out. Like now, especially if it's organic land and it has to be tilled, obviously that's going to be drier. But even when we're not, even when it is staying conventional land and it was sprayed or and then dissed into or whatever, that soil is definitely from that immense root system. It's going to be a little bit drier than something has been annually cropped for the past few years. Um, which is actually a bonus for us in the spring, because, for example, I think we're about 25% done seeding right now, and we have a lot of people in this area, a lot of farms that haven't even been able to get started seeding yet because it's been wet. So it's good for us in that we can get out there and get seeding earlier. And then we also find that when you do have weather events later on, that soil rebounds a little bit quicker. So even though it started drier, it doesn't stay dry throughout the next year. So that was a unintended bonus that we've definitely found over the years. But back to the organic thing. Sorry for the sidebar there. But back to the organic thing. Yeah, other than that, really, the big learning curve has been putting in systems, making sure bins are labeled, creating systems for proper clean out of equipment, seeders, combines, all those things. Honestly, it's not a ton different than I grew up on a seed farm, and it's not a lot different from a lot of the protocols that seed farms have to go through in not getting different crops mixed up and stuff like that. Um, yeah, does that answer your question? Perfect. Um, yeah,
We
I
do
don't
have
know.
a couple minutes, unless if anybody has any final questions.
Yeah.
I'll uh I'll ask one more while we're waiting, I guess. But you mentioned natural waterways and trees. And so my understanding is that you're talking about trees as a benefit to your operation because typically trees are seen as something to get rid of. So tell me a little bit more about like how your operation works within your environment. How do your natural resources support what you guys are doing?
Right. I mean, that is the great thing about cattle is that they can utilize land that has wetlands on it, that has bush on it, to an extent. Obviously, cattle can't graze trees and or can't graze where water is laying, but it still is a benefit for us when we're thinking about the cattle, whether it is wind protection in the winter or sun protection in the summer. Um, the cattle part has been great about being allowing us to utilize a lot of that. That being said, it's a catch 22. I would be full on lying if I said we have never removed trees on this farm. There's a lot of our land that has a lot of bush on it that could otherwise be productive farming land. Also, we have definitely found that as our cattle numbers go down, we can't utilize all that land the same as we used to. So we've had to switch up some of that land use and make it more grain farmable. Also, as our grain farming acres have increased, the size of our grain farming equipment has also had to increase. And you need to be able to make sure you can get the drill into all the parts of the farm and stuff like that, all the parts of the land. So yeah, it's not it's not perfect by any means, but I do love that we have a lot of trees here, and that can be a good thing instead of just a hindrance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got maybe one final question from Stuart again here. I love hearing about your mixed farm and the synergies in it, and that seems less and less common. What allows you to maintain that mixed farm? Scale, personal passion, mixed interest among family. What is it in your farm story that was key to retain a mixed farm model, when for many other farms, specialization is more of the choice? Hmm.
That is a great question and something we've been thinking about a lot lately as we've been transitioning to fewer cattle and more grain acres. So I grew up on a grain farm. I had 4-H steer was like the extent of my cattle knowledge. But my husband was always very much more into the cattle side of things. Um, that being said, in the past 5 years, there has been a noticeable shift in both of our passions. As we've gotten older, we want to not have to work quite so hard. And it's not like we are so old that we can't yet. but we foresee that day coming. And the really, really hard part about cattle has been that we can find people to put butts in seats of equipment, but finding qualified people that want to work with cattle but don't want to be a cowboy or cowgirl, because that's a different story sometimes. Not that you can't be both, but there's a difference. I always say there's a difference between a cattleman and a cowboy, or a difference between a cattlewoman and a cowgirl, right? Sometimes they're both, but not always. So finding people that want to work with cattle and do the hard work, processing and all of that has been next to impossible for us. And we just end up doing the majority of that work as a family, which you get to a certain age and that gets pretty hard on the body. So we just don't love it as much as we used to, or enjoy it maybe as much as we used to. Also, the fact that the past, well, all through our farming career, to be honest, grain farming has been consistently financially productive. Not that there aren't highs and lows years, not that there isn't risk, but definitely there are business risk management solutions that are very well tailored to help support the grain farm side of our operation. And there are very, very few that actually support the cattle side of our operation. And it just gets to be the point where when you are investing the kind of money that we have been, um, we would like to see our bottom side protected a little more, which we can do on the grain side. So those are all the reasons why we've been downsizing the cow herd. Quite honestly, because of those reasons, I think that if it wasn't for the synergies that make our whole farm be better, we wouldn't have any more cattle already. We would have sold out off all of the cattle and we would be straight grain farming right now. But we see the benefits. We see the benefits to the soil. We see the benefits to um, being able to utilize feed grains that we're growing here, maybe that we can use in different ways. We've seen years where crops froze and we were able to utilize that as feed. We've also seen the benefits of raising a family and having cattle on the farm and how good that was for our kids in having them be productive parts of our farm. There's just so many great parts that even though it's a struggle, even though it maybe doesn't make sense lifestyle wise, we would love to get to the lake in the summer, but the cattle make it hard. But it's the benefits that we see that we haven't, that we still have cattle on this farm. And honestly, I can't picture us ever not. I don't know what our low number will be. I don't think we've hit it yet. I think we'll have fewer cattle still, but we will always have a base of a cattle herd here, um, because of the synergies. And also, I don't know if we would be able to organic farm the way we do without having that ability to rehab or to continue the health of the soil like we are. So that makes a big difference.
Great answer. Awesome. Well, that was lots of information. And
A lot of me talking, and a lot of
well,
that's
that's
all
what we're
just
here
having to look
for.
at my face all evening. So thank you for sticking it out.
Thanks so much for sharing about your operation and your insights and your experiences. This was really helpful. And thanks again for the Q&A to everyone as well. This will be on YouTube for those of you that want to rewatch it and or those that weren't able to be here as well. And with that, we will sign off. We don't want to keep you guys here this evening, but yeah, really appreciate it, Adrienne, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
That was super fun. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Night, everyone.